I think this puts Nvidia at a position where not only are they Tesla's vendor for, the chips inside the vehicles, but they're also now Tesla's competition.
Built this week, breaking it down. Built this week, we show you how. A fresh idea, a clever tweak. You locked in, you built this week.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Built This Week 2026, the podcast where we share what we're building, how we're building it, and what it means for the world of AI and startups. I'm Sam Nadler, co-founder here at Rise Labs, and each and every week I'm joined by my friend, business partner, co-host, Jordan Metzner. How you doing today, Jordan?
Hey, Sam. Happy New Year. Happy to be back. Brand new episode. Got lots going on in the AI world, and just so much to talk about. So really happy to be back here.
Yeah, so we'll jump into the docket, but before I do, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is our first episode of 2026, but we've just eclipsed the 25 episode mark. This is our 26th episode, so give us a like and subscribe. We're about to cross over 18,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we'd love your support. So our docket, we're going to cover a tool you built for, I think it's an automated trading bot on Kalshi. And then we're going to get into one of our favorite AI tools, NotebookLM, to show kind of how we use it for onboarding new employees. And there's tons of different use cases that are great for learning. And I'm sure there's tons of others, but learning and just overall educational opportunities. And then finally, the hottest AI news. Couple articles about Nvidia, a couple articles about Anthropic, and that'll be it for this week's episode.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it then, I should.
All right, let's see what you built for Kalshi, which has been, I think last year all over the news. It's been a exciting, I guess, new way to gamble. I think that may be the probably inappropriate word that they don't like using, but let's see what you built.
So, obviously prediction markets have been a really hot craze in 2025 moving into 2026. And, not only have we seen obviously the proliferation of Kalshi and Polymarket, but we've seen, other brands starting to come out and drive their own prediction markets. I think Robinhood has a deal with Kalshi. I saw Coinbase is launching a prediction market. I know Fanatics was talking about launching a prediction market. I believe FanDuel and DraftKings, they've talked about launching prediction markets. And why are all these guys launching prediction markets in the first place? Well, I think one thing that, Kalshi and Polymarket were able to figure out was that the style and format of these prediction markets has allowed them to circumvent state local regulations in regards to casino gambling online and allowed them to be regulated by the CFTC. And so that's kind of been like the first really big change, because historically, I live in California, and online sports gambling is not available in California through FanDuel and DraftKings and Fanatics and some of these other players. And yet Kalshi is available. And, effectively the behavior is almost identical. You really feel like you're just gambling on sports. The format is a little bit different. The way it's laid out is a little bit different. The fact that you're, supposedly playing against other players in the market is a little bit different. But for the most part, it does feel pretty close to the equivalent of gambling. And, for a while now, I've thought about building like a trading bot or a chat bot or some kind of bot where I could try to figure out kind of where was some opportunity inside of these markets to make money. Now, of course, like I'm not the only one doing this. I think you could just go into Twitter and type in Kalshi bot or, any of these other ones. And, we've seen incredible types of, run-ups. I think, with the Maduro invasion last week, we saw, some traders obviously make a ton of money there. Obviously, we saw traders with some type of inside information predicting, who is the most searched person of the year, what was the Spotify artist of the year. So we've seen a ton of kind of, whether it was known or unknown, insider trading or not, but we've seen some definitely some mega moves on top of all of these markets. And I think, during the break, I had some free time and I just thought, why don't I give my hand a try at making my own trading bot? So, one, I'm not really a good gambler and I don't know a lot about sports. So I think that puts me in a good position, because I honestly have no idea who is going to win the soccer game today between two teams in like the British Premier League. I don't know any of that kind of stuff. And so I figured, I'm going to build a trading bot. So, first let me give you some parameters of like, what I thought would be important if I was going to build a trading bot. So the first thing I think that's important to me is like I need feedback, and I need as close to real-time feedback as possible, because during development I want to know if, like, my algorithm works, if I'm right or wrong. And so, any type of long dated trade is really not a good option for me. So who's going to win the World Cup, who's going to be, the nominee for the next presidential election, like those types of trades, they don't really work for me because they're so long dated and so far out. Now they could be good trades for other people, but I just don't really have the time to figure that out. And so what I'm looking for are trades that basically are going to expire soon. And I don't care when they started, but they're going to expire soon, right? So I'm looking for live trades. And normally the best types of live trades happen to be sports, because there's just sports going on all the time. Now, again, like I said, I don't really know anything about sports. So, how should I make these trades? What is my algorithm? How does it work, right? And so what I did is kind of built an algorithm, obviously using, Opus 4.5, using Cursor, using Claude Code, using a few different tools. I think this, but Polymarket's not available to traders in the United States. So Polymarket wasn't available to me. Kalshi is available to me and has a fully robust API. So I chose to do Kalshi. I put about $250 into my account, and you can see my current account's at $243. So I'm down about, a little less than $6.60, so about $7. And in total, I made about 12 trades. And of those 12 trades, I actually won 8 of the 12. So I was actually at about 66% success rate in those trades. And yet, even with that, I was still negative on my trades. And I had a negative yield here. It says like overall of 2.6%. I didn't trade all the $250. I probably only traded like $20, $30, $40 at most. So I would say like overall relative percentage wise, it's probably even higher as a brute percentage. But I think what really killed me was the transaction fees, which I really wasn't predicting as well and didn't have it in my original algorithm. So anyway, nonetheless, let me show you a little bit of what's happening. And so what's happening right now is, and you can see a change in real time, but essentially there's a live alert feed that is constantly looking over all the active trades that are happening on Kalshi. And you can see, if we go down here, you can kind of see some of this different activity happening. Now, I can see, spikes in volume. I can see spikes in whale behavior, essentially like high level bets, essentially high dollar amounts. I can see changes of behavior. I can see all this kind of stuff. And all that, what that does is kind of gives me options of trades that are happening, right now. So here we can filter the trades out by a whale is made a position, or coordinated, or even just something that has like a lot of, activity. Here this says coordinated entry because it says 7 different traders piled in on a yes bet on that particular trade. And so what you can see here, there's all different types of trades of all different types of things. UNC Wilmington versus Northeastern, who's the winner here, right? So what you can see is this is a whale trade. Somebody bet 236 contracts at 35 cents that UNC Wilmington will beat Northeastern. And honestly, I don't even know what sport that is. If it's college basketball, football, I have no idea. But in general, all these trades are available on Kalshi in real time. And so what I did is I looked at, kind of trades like this, and I would essentially bet based on its recommendation. So this says bet $92 on yes. I think I was like doing it more fractionally, so I probably would have bet $9.20. But
is the strategy mainly to follow the trend? Like you're either following a whales bet or following a high volume signal? Is that, generally speaking, what your strategy is?
Yeah, I think, one thing I think that makes prediction markets so interesting is it feels like there's insider trading. It feels like there's people trading that have information or access to information that wasn't previously available. And so because of that, and because of your ability and visibility into seeing the market trades, when you go to a Las Vegas sportsbook, the line, you might know a few other pieces of information, but do you really know how many people are betting? How many people just placed a bet in the last 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes? You really don't. And what these markets do is they offer some sort of transparency in that respect to allow you to see how the behaviors are happening on top of those trades. And so, yeah, I can look at whales, basically like high dollar amount trades. I look at coordination. So essentially like when there's high coordination, like many people making the same trade. So here you can see 7 traders. Here you can see 7 traders. Here you can see 7 traders. So, what it's seeing, hey, a lot of people are placing the same bet. Maybe there's some kind of behavior there. And then the last one is just like high, like in general, like here you can see like when it's on high, essentially you're seeing like big shakes and move ups between the different markets, right? So, a bunch of people are moving into this, so that might be like an active thing as well. Okay, cool. So that was my dashboard, but let me kind of jump into my trading view page here. So here you can see the trades are going to come in. I have a confidence score on every trade. I even have a QR code that you can pop up and scan this QR code, and that will actually take you right to the trading page so you can make the trade on your phone. You can see there's 36 live events. We can filter by sports or politics or crypto, economy, entertainment, etc. We can sort by the reasons, the codes for why these different things are happening. You can also sort by different confidence scores, ultimate ROI, a bunch of different things. So, you can say, hey, I'm looking for, a confidence score of above 80 in sports. And as you can see, and not just whale signal, but let's put all signals. So you can see right now the confidence score of the highest events are only 75. And to me, that's like not a good enough confidence score. In fact, I want to see a confidence score of 80 or above, or even 90 would be optimal. And so, yeah, you can basically use this to make your different trades. This is a multi-level trade. Here you can see these are kind of some more complicated trades, as you can see. So these are like, this is a 20-cent trade, but if you're correct, you'll win $10, right? So the multiple here is really, really big versus kind of like a who wins which game. If we look at this, like, Cremonese Calgary winner, right? You see, like, you bet $1 to get $9 on the yes here. So my guess is that if you bet on the no, it probably has a 90% chance of winning. All right, great. Let's look at some of the trades I made here. So I deposited some money in my account. I made some trades. I canceled some trades. I focused on some sports here. Here you can see kind of like when I won and when I didn't. This UI is probably not optimal to see kind of when I won and lost, but essentially here you can see here's a Serie A game from Italy. Here's from France, and all different games all across. This is Newcastle versus Crystal Palace. And if we click on the trade here, you can see in this trade, I bet yes, and I got 0 earnings, which means I lost. Here I bet yes, and I did win. I won $9. So you can kind of see like which trades I won. Here I won $4. Here I won $0. Anyway, the UI is probably like a little bit suboptimal, but the long story short is that even though I won the majority of my trades, I guess like over 50%, 66%, I still lost money. And I think I lost money for 2 major reasons. One, the transaction fees are incredibly high. And when I'm taking low margin trades, kind of like low risk settlements, I found that the transaction fees kind of take away my margin. And then 2 is that, these are bots trading on bots trading on bots, right? I'm trading based on the behavior of the whole network and how many other people are trading on the behavior of the whole network. And so, essentially you have this like kind of consensus algorithm that's happening over time where, consensus drives more consensus, drives more consensus. Even if your plan is to do the
Even if it's
opposite
the
of the
wrong
consensus.
signal. Yeah.
Exactly. Or even if your plan is to do the opposite of what the consensus is, then there's a new consensus and that becomes a new consensus. And so, the good thing about sports is that they're very well defined, right? A game starts and it stops. It has a winner and a loser or a tie. And so those things are like pretty well definable. There was some news this week that, Polymarket didn't want to pay out on the Maduro trade because they said it wasn't officially an invasion. And so you start to look at some of these events, these political events, and you start to say that actually maybe there's some gray area in the definition of these types of events. Whereas in sports, there was no gray area of who won or lost or how many points were made, etc. So in general, it was a very educational experience. I learned a ton. And, just to bring it all around full circle, I think like my biggest takeaway is that the only real way to make money on these markets is to have inside information. And without that, I think, you're even with algorithm, even with all this data, I think there's no real way to gain some type of alpha or some type of advantage against the rest of the market. At least for me, maybe I could spend more time trading on it. I've seen people spend a lot of time improving their trade bots, but the market is continuing to change. More people are coming in, more people are coming out, and it still remains to be seen kind of how this will all end. But yeah, I just thought it was a cool, fun little project. I'll probably end up taking my money out of here and, go away with my $7 loss and call it a day. But yeah, happy to answer your question, Sam. I built all this. Obviously, it's all connected directly into Kalshi. It's got a back end, front end, the whole thing.
No, I think it's, I think the key would be like what signals could actually, drive those earnings. But I think that's obviously the hard part. Super cool tool, Jordan. I mean, I think it's topical and, just shows what you can do with AI, even though it didn't, your 12 trades didn't really work out in your favor. It's just, I'm sure someone who maybe has that ability, that gambling experience, could take something what you built and turn it into a tool that, makes money in the sleep. So love what you did here. Just to transition, we're going to transition into our AI tool of the week, which is a tool you actually showed me, and it's called NotebookLM. It's a tool from Google. And what I've really liked about NotebookLM, and you've used it for a few different things than I've used it, but it's almost, for me, it's been able to generate really nice education materials. And I think the educational use case of NotebookLM is pretty incredible. So I personally have used it, historically when we've onboarded new employees over time, we've gotten, in some ways they've been organized, in other ways they haven't been organized, but a lot of the shared learning has been just Google Docs. Google Docs of, hey, this is what happens when we do this. This is what you should know about this scenario, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of great things about reading Google Docs as you join a new team, but there are certain things that can be conveyed better in either an infographic. I love the audio use case. I've heard from, I was talking to one of my daughter's teachers about how students are using LLMs, and this wasn't really specific to her age group, but a lot of them are taking their notes, putting it into NotebookLM, and generating an audio overview. So they're basically taking their notes from the week, putting it in a podcast, going to work out and listening to their podcast or a walk or whatever. And I just thought that's such a cool way to learn. I did take one of our, standard onboarding Google Docs and create an infographic if you want me to share, but it looks like you're building as we speak using LLM. I didn't see the prompt, but is there a way to win consistently on Kalshi with a trading bot? So you can take what it gives you, you can chat with it, and then I guess you could build a playbook or flashcards or a slide deck based on the output. So we'll see what it says. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
so we can definitely add in and post. Hopefully we can show up on the screen what you built with NotebookLM, your onboarding document, because I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, I just asked it to teach me about Kalshi trading bots, basically. And so, what it did is it went on the internet and it looked for some trading bot documentation. It found a YouTube video about Kalshi trading bots. It found the documentation from Kalshi's website about how their APIs work. And it even found a paper that says unraveling the probabilistic forest arbitrage and prediction markets. And so it's actually finding white papers and it's bringing it into the mix. And with all of that, it's kind of preparing this, 9-page slide deck for me. But one of the questions I asked it is, after built all this, is there any way to win consistently on Kalshi with a trading bot? And it says winning consistently usually relies on mathematical arbitrage or providing liquidity rather than pure gambling on outcomes. Yeah, obviously. And so, these arbitrage opportunities, whether they're like cross-platform arbitrage, that's like a very famous one. So kind of finding where if you vote yes on Polymarket and no on Kalshi, or no on Kalshi and yes on Polymarket, that there's a small delta arbitrage there that you can kind of capture that yield. Like I said, I believe fees are too high to actually capture those yields because the fees have to be lower than the delta between the arbitrage. There's also some, they call it same platform arbitrages. I actually don't believe those truly exist. Those are like market inefficiencies within their own market, and they're honestly like pretty low. I have seen some arbitrages of like time arbitrage where people have been able to, for example, it might be a soccer game and someone's in the stadium. And so as soon as the goal happens, they're able to make the trade before they're seeing that goal being put onto the scoreboard on a Kalshi or Polymarket. But I believe that like time arbitrage shall go away. I mean, if these markets have that type of risk, they'll probably be able to tap that, to patch that up pretty quickly. And I think overall, that's what this is saying, is that like there really isn't yield, because like eventually there's enough volume on these markets that they become pretty perfect markets. And, then it just becomes kind of the same as like trading stock options, right? And, I don't think I have a good ability to write an algorithm to be a good stock option broker, stock option trader. And, it seems that, after learning these markets, there's not excess yield available, right? And if there is excess yield, they're taking it back in fees. And so I think that was like kind of the most interesting thing for me, which is that, while Kalshi and Polymarket may say they're not a casino, they sure feel like the house, and it sure feels like the house always wins.
Well, if you don't mind, let me share really quick and I'll show you like this quick infographic. I have it pulled up. I just think the educational use case of is really powerful. And so just keep in mind this was literally a doc that a Google Doc. It was just plain text. It was a hiring journey, as one of our major businesses is staffing and we onboard recruiters. And within that one Google Doc, generate an infographic and it walks you through. No, I haven't really reviewed this to see if it's perfect, but yeah, obviously phase 1 is sourcing, phase 2 is offer and onboarding, and phase 3 is post hire support. And I just thought this was a really cool illustration. Took 5 seconds to create. And obviously with a little bit of chatting with Notebook, there's just so many ways you can either generate infographics, podcasts, slide decks, you name it. And I just think it's a really cool tool that people should be aware of. And this is one use case, your use case. I wonder if your deck is ready, but I find it better for this educational content versus Google AI Studio, Bolt, or Claude, or Open ChatGPT.
Yeah, one thing I found NotebookLM, so here it's still generating the slides, but one thing I thought that was really cool is that I've seen it being used from people of all ages, and that's kind of one unique use case. I've seen doctors and scientists use it as well as, like you mentioned, kind of elementary school and college students using it as well. As it's like original version was kind of creating a podcast based on any subject matter. And it seems like you can still do that with this kind of audio overview. But I mean, look, Google's added video overview, mind maps, reports, flashcards. You can even create your own custom quiz. We're making a slide deck here as well as data tables. So, I think obviously Google will obviously continue to develop this. It's been one of their hits in the AI world. And yeah, it's just a fun place to use as a tool to get more educated and learn about new topics. And thankfully Google's given this away for free, but hopefully this will be part of the Google Suite or maybe some other premium features over time.
Cool. All right, we got some hot news. We're going to start overall with Nvidia and their entrance into the autonomous vehicle space with the launch of, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Alpha Mayo. So it's, I think it's direct competition to Tesla's self-driving. My understanding is they're partnering with Mercedes, and within, this year, they're going to have their Nvidia chips inside a Mercedes vehicle. Was it the E-Class or the C-Class? I can't remember. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting opportunity for Nvidia. Obviously, it's a long road to master autonomous driving, and Tesla's been at it for, longer than a decade, I think, it feels. But what are your thoughts on the strategy and their entrance into the market?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously this is pretty crazy news, at least from like outside perspective, not knowing what Elon and Jensen have been talking about. But, one, obviously I'm a huge Tesla fan, as you know, and I have a Tesla, and full self-driving, at least since 14.2, has been really, really incredible user experience. I think this puts Nvidia at a position where not only are they Tesla's vendor for, the chips inside the vehicles, but they're also now Tesla's competition. And I also think what's kind of interesting is that, Nvidia knew that if they wanted to sell more chips inside of vehicles, that they were going to be the ones that were needed to do the development. And that is actually kind of a new and interesting thing because, historically, Tesla's been buying these chips from Nvidia and building their own full self-driving stack. And I think, if you would have asked me before this announcement, who's Tesla's competition in full self-driving, we probably would have named other auto manufacturers that are trying to build self-driving vehicles. And I think we probably would not have said that Nvidia, who is a vendor of Tesla, is going to be Tesla's competition here. And so I think like that's probably the biggest change, which is like, in areas in which Nvidia believes that the consumer of these chips is not able to fabricate the technology in which the chips are being used, that they have gone ahead and developed software simply just so that their customers can buy more chips from them. And I think that is like super interesting. Now, the flip side of that is kind of what Elon has said publicly about this, which is, they've gotten maybe 99% of the way there, but, Tesla truly believes that like the last, 1% is a very, very long tail, and it'll be very difficult for these manufacturers to get there. Now, what does this mean for Nvidia? What does this mean for Tesla? It's really hard to say. I think we all know that Nvidia is sitting on a ton of cash. Does Nvidia go buy an auto manufacturer and become Tesla's competitor? Does Nvidia become the provider of first source to many auto manufacturers of full self-driving? I think I'd mentioned this to you a few weeks back, but with the latest Tesla update, I was truly, and I still do believe that Tesla will sell their full self-driving vehicle technology to other auto manufacturers. It seems so obvious, but if that's the case, now they're going to compete against Nvidia, which might be willing to give the software for free if they buy a certain chip, right? And so that actually might have some impact on market dynamics, etc. I also think, like, at the end of the day, a lot of people do not understand and have not experienced the quality of Tesla's full self-driving in its latest iteration. And I think that when people feel it, when people experience it, and like you mentioned just a few weeks ago, Sam, when you had that first Waymo, I told you that they were driverless. You knew they've been driverless. You knew that, right? But once you're in the car and you're driving and you feel the turns and you feel the experience, everything just kind of changes, And I think the same is true for the Tesla self-driving. We haven't seen large populations of people who don't have Teslas like experience it, use it, feel it. Tesla's robotaxi is coming out to market now, but you always tell me about how, your dad hates driving. He never likes to drive long distances. He never likes to drive at night. Well, what happens if he has a Tesla and he's full self-driving all the time? How much better does that make his quality of life? Or, maybe he's just willing to use it at nighttime so that he's willing to maybe go out to dinner when previously he wouldn't. So obviously this is a new day and a lot of things are happening. I can't wait until I can actually just completely ignore my steering wheel and gas and brake and just, kind of be on my laptop while I'm inside the car.
Or take a quick nap.
And hopefully we're not that far away. Yeah, maybe even take a nap. Exactly. Yeah. Watch a movie, watch it, do whatever. So
cool. Yeah, that LA
think,
traffic all
anyway,
of a sudden is a benefit.
Yeah, I don't think anybody likes waiting when they don't need to, but yeah, if you're in traffic and you can watch a movie and you fall asleep or, get some work done, right? So yeah, obviously huge opportunity here. Let's just jump right into the next Nvidia story because I think it's also incredibly
and then we'll wrap
interesting.
up. But yeah, Nvidia launches the new Rubin chip, and I know you have a bit more insight on why this chip is actually different, but it seems like it's like the next wave of, or will enable the next wave of massive AI models.
Yeah, so I mean, look, obviously they being Nvidia is trying to consistently improve the technology of their chips. They are obviously building better packs and better formats and new implementations. This new chipset is called a Rubin or a Rubin pod. And I think inside each Rubin is 72 GPUs. And then I think inside of each GPU, there's more than 1,000 plus chips. So we're talking like thousands and thousands of GPUs at the core that are able to power these things. And, as the market leader, we're going to continue to see new use cases that were not available previously. So, we're going to see increase in efficiency. We're going to see increase in new applications and hopefully some new discoveries, whether that's scientific, mathematical, or even things that are fun like video generation, image generation, self-driving and whatnot. So overall, it just seems like NVIDIA is kind of, essentially they're striking on all cylinders. But yeah, it's, I mean, I did not expect this coming out of NVIDIA at the first of the year. And yeah, the game's heating up and, competition is probably good for the market. And hopefully this will continue to put pressure on Tesla to continue to improve their product.
Yeah, just to be specific, it's from this article, it says the Rubin architecture will operate 3.5 times faster than the Blackwell architecture on model training and 5 times faster on inference tasks. I mean, that's a pretty big increase in performance. So, I think to me, obviously, it was expected that I assumed, I guess for me, that NVIDIA would keep pushing the boundaries on new chip development. But I think it's really exciting. They're entering into this autonomous driving space, super bullish about the next several years with NVIDIA. And yeah, anything else in the news or NVIDIA? Anything else we want to cover?
I think just wrapping up, we didn't really talk about Anthropic and Claude, but just, really quickly, Anthropic raised a new round this week. There's a new version of Claude Code. But, after sitting with my developers this week, everybody is just enthralled with the quality of work coming out of Anthropic and the quality of Claude Code, the quality of Opus 4.5. And, this feels like the early days still. I think, another Opus version, i.e. something a little bit better than 4.5 will really be amazing. We're seeing a ton of tools written on top of Claude Code. I think I told you about the Ralph Wiggum plugin that allows you to do things like that. There's a vibe code check-in plugin. I've seen some Claude Code observability tools. So it's really getting to a cool space where not only is Claude Code and Anthropic and their models and becoming kind of standardized in the market, but we're starting to see some really cool tools on top that just allow developers to do even crazier things. And again, like I said, Sam, like this is just the early days. We're in January of the beginning of the 2026, but I think in 3 to 6 months from now, we're going to say, wow, that felt really antiquated to what's available on the market today.
Cool. Totally. Well, thank you, Jordan. It was great to see your Kalshi tools. Great to hear your take on Nvidia. And don't forget to like and subscribe. New episodes every week. We got some great guests lined up already throughout pretty much the next 8 to 10 weeks. So see you next week, everyone. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. You can check us out at builtthisweek.com. You can check us out on YouTube under Built This Week or any of your favorite podcast platforms. Coming into 2026, we've got a ton of new entrepreneurs in the AI space and even in the non-AI space joining us. So we got some really exciting episodes coming up. And thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you again next week. Bye-bye.